7-year-old Maya walked into Riverside Elementary School every morning at exactly 7:15. The building was quiet at that hour. The hallways smelled like floor cleaner and the cafeteria's breakfast cooking in the distance. Most kids didn't arrive until 7:45, but Maya was always early. Her mom dropped her off on the way to her first job at the grocery store, and there was nowhere else for the little girl to go. She would push open the heavy door to Mrs. Henderson's third-grade classroom and slip inside like a shadow. The room was bright yellow with alphabet posters on the walls and a reading corner filled with cushions that looked like giant crayons. Maya loved that corner, but she rarely sat there when other kids were around. Instead, she would go straight to her desk in the back right corner of the room, climb onto the blue plastic chair and wait. Sometimes she would take out a library book and read. Sometimes she would just sit there, tracing invisible patterns on the desk with her finger, watching dust particles float through the morning sunlight. She had learned to be very still, very quiet. At home, being quiet meant her mom could sleep an extra 30 minutes before her alarm went off. At school, being quiet meant teachers didn't call on you or ask questions you weren't ready to answer. Maya wasn't like the other kids in her class. They came in loud, with light-up sneakers and character backpacks, already talking about video games or soccer practice or birthday parties. She had a plain navy backpack from the donation bin at church and sneakers that used to be white, but were now more gray. The sole on her left shoe had started to peel away from the bottom, and sometimes it made a flapping sound when she walked. She tried to walk quietly so no one would notice. Mrs. Henderson had been teaching third grade for 15 years. She was the kind of teacher who had her lesson plans ready 2 weeks in advance and kept her classroom organized with labeled bins and color-coded folders. She believed in structure. Rules posted on the wall, consequences for breaking them, rewards for following them. Her students knew exactly what to expect every single day, and parents loved her for it. She was good at her job, or at least she thought she was. Her students scored well on tests. They could recite their multiplication tables and write 5-paragraph essays about what they did over summer vacation. The principal often mentioned her as a model teacher, someone new staff should observe and learn from. Mrs. Henderson took pride in that. Teaching was her life. She'd never married, never had children of her own, and she poured everything into those 23 students who sat in her classroom each year. But if you'd asked Mrs. Henderson to tell you about Maya, she probably couldn't have said much. The girl was quiet. She turned in her homework on time. She never caused disruptions. That's about all the teacher knew. In a classroom full of kids who needed constant attention, who called out answers without raising their hands or forgot their pencils or got into arguments at recess, Maya simply didn't register as someone who needed anything at all. The truth was, Maya needed a lot. She needed someone to notice that she wore the same purple sweater 3 days in a row. She needed someone to see that she never bought hot lunch in the cafeteria, and that the sandwich in her lunchbox was often just bread with a thin scrape of peanut butter. She needed someone to realize that when the teacher asked students to share something fun they did with their families over the weekend, Maya always said nothing much and looked down at her desk. Most of all, Maya needed someone to see her. Really see her. Not just as a name on the attendance sheet or a face in the back row, but as a whole person with feelings and dreams and a heart that could break. Every morning, Maya would watch Mrs. Henderson arrive at 7:30. The teacher would bustle in with her travel coffee mug and her rolling bag full of papers to grade, flip on all the lights, and start preparing for the day. She would write the schedule on the whiteboard. She would arrange materials for the morning's math lesson. She would water the plant on her desk and straighten the books on the shelf. And every morning, Maya would sit there in the back corner watching, waiting, hoping that maybe today would be the day Mrs. Henderson would look over and say good morning to her. Not to the whole class when everyone arrived, but to her specifically. Just a small moment of recognition that would tell Maya she mattered, that someone had noticed she existed, but it never happened. Mrs. Henderson was too busy, too focused on her to-do list, too wrapped up in the 100 small tasks that fill a teacher's morning. She never looked back at that corner where Maya sat so still and quiet. Being good, being invisible. Maya had learned about invisible things in science class. Mrs. Henderson explained that air was invisible but still real, that you couldn't see wind but you could see what it did to the trees. Maya sometimes felt like air, present but unseen, real but unnoticed. She could see her effect on things. The homework papers she completed, the test scores she earned, the perfect attendance record on the chart. But nobody seemed to see her. At her old school before they moved to this neighborhood, Maya had a teacher named Miss Palmer who used to greet every student by name at the door each morning. She would high-five them or say something personal like, "I hope your cat feels better," or "Can't wait to see your science project today." Maya had loved that. It made her feel like she was somebody, like her presence made a difference. But Miss Palmer taught second grade, and that was last year in a different town. Now Maya was in third grade with Mrs. Henderson, and everything felt harder. The work was harder. Making friends was harder. Being invisible was harder because she was old enough now to really understand what it meant to be overlooked. She tried sometimes to make herself more visible. Once she raised her hand to answer a question about the book they were reading. Her heart pounded while her hand was up, and she practiced the answer in her head over and over. But Mrs. Henderson called on someone else, someone whose hand shot up higher and faster. Maya lowered her hand and told herself it didn't matter. Another time, she drew a picture during free art period. It was a picture of a rainbow with a horse underneath it. She loved horses, even though she'd never been close to one in real life. She spent the whole art period on that drawing, using every color in the crayon box, making the horse's mane flow like it was running through a field. At the end of class, she walked up to Mrs. Henderson's desk and stood there, holding the picture, hoping the teacher would notice and maybe say it was pretty. But Mrs. Henderson was helping another student with a glue stick that wasn't working. And then the bell rang for recess, and Maya just put the picture in her backpack and went outside alone. The playground was the worst part of the day. All the other kids had their groups and their games and their best friends. Maya would stand by the fence and watch them play. Or sometimes she'd sit on the swings but not really swing, just twist back and forth with her feet dragging in the dirt. The recess monitors never noticed her standing alone. As long as kids weren't fighting or crying, the monitors didn't pay much attention. Back in the classroom after recess, Maya would return to her corner desk and pull out her work. She was actually really good at school. Reading was easy for her. She could spell words that other kids struggled with. Math made sense in her brain, the way numbers fit together like puzzle pieces. If anyone had asked, they would have discovered that Maya was probably one of the smartest kids in the class. But nobody asked. Mrs. Henderson handed back graded papers with check marks and occasional stickers, but never with personal comments or conversations. When Maya got a perfect score on her spelling test, the paper came back with 100% in red pen at the top and nothing else. Maya would look at that 100% and feel nothing. It was just another invisible achievement from an invisible girl. She used to bring her good papers home to show her mom, hoping for a smile or a hug or words of pride. But her mom was so tired all the time, working the morning shift at the grocery store and the evening shift at the nursing home. When Maya showed her the 100% spelling test, her mom would nod and say, "That's good, baby," in a voice that was already half asleep. Then she'd kiss Maya's forehead and shuffle to bed, and Maya would be alone again with her papers and her pride that had nowhere to go. So Maya stopped expecting much. She stopped hoping for attention. She just showed up every day, did her work, sat in her corner, and tried not to need anything from anyone. 7 years old, and already she had learned how to make herself small. The trouble started on a Tuesday morning in November. Mrs. Henderson woke up that day already feeling behind. She'd stayed up until midnight grading social studies projects, and her alarm clock went off what felt like 5 minutes after she'd finally fallen asleep. Then her coffee maker broke halfway through brewing, leaving her with half a cup and a puddle on the counter to clean up. The traffic was worse than usual, and she arrived at school with only 10 minutes before the students would start filing in. She hated feeling rushed. It threw off her whole system. Mrs. Henderson was a person who needed order, control, predictability. When things felt chaotic, she got snappy. Her patience, which was already worn thin from years of dealing with squirmy 8-year-olds, became almost non-existent. The morning started fine enough. Reading lesson went okay, though Tommy kept tapping his pencil and it was driving her crazy. Math lesson was better. Then came free choice time, where students could read in the book corner, draw at the art table, or play educational games on the classroom tablets. Mrs. Henderson used this 30-minute period to catch up on paperwork and take a breath. She was deep into filling out progress reports when she heard Melissa's voice calling from across the room. "Mrs. Henderson." Someone messed up the reading corner. The teacher looked up, already feeling her jaw tighten. The reading corner was her pride and joy. She'd spent her own money on those cushions, the big colorful ones that looked like crayons. She'd arranged them just so, and students knew they were supposed to treat them with care. She walked over to find 3 of the cushions covered in crayon marks, not the kind that looked like intentional drawing, but the messy kind where someone had just scribbled without thinking. Red and blue waxy lines all over the yellow cushion, green marks across the orange one. "Who did this?" Mrs. Henderson asked, her voice sharper than she intended. The frustration from her whole morning was bubbling up now, looking for somewhere to land. "Maya was the last one over here," Melissa said. A few other kids nodded in agreement. "We saw her before art time." Mrs. Henderson turned and looked at the back corner where Maya sat. The little girl's face had gone pale. She was gripping her pencil so hard her knuckles were white. "Maya, come here, please." The walk from Maya's desk to the reading corner was only about 15 feet, but it felt like a mile. Every eye in the classroom was on her. Her feet in those worn-out sneakers shuffled slowly across the floor, and the peeling sole made its telltale flapping sound. Some of the kids giggled. Maya's cheeks burned red. When she reached Mrs. Henderson, she couldn't even look up. She stared at the floor, at the teacher's sensible black shoes with the rubber soles. Her chin was trembling, and she bit the inside of her cheek to make herself stop. "Did you do this?" Mrs. Henderson asked, pointing at the crayon marks. Her voice wasn't kind. It was tired and annoyed and looking for someone to blame so this problem could be solved, and she could move on to the next thing. Maya shook her head. The movement was tiny, barely visible. "No, ma'am," she whispered. Her voice was so quiet it was almost not there at all. "I can't hear you," Mrs. Henderson said, frustration leaking into every word. "You need to speak up when I'm talking to you." "Did you mess up these cushions?" "No, ma'am," Maya said again, louder this time, but still barely above a whisper. Tears were building behind her eyes, making everything look blurry and strange. But Mrs. Henderson had already made up her mind. The evidence seemed clear. Maya was the last one in the reading corner. The other students said so. The little girl was standing there looking guilty and scared, which Mrs. Henderson interpreted as the look of someone who'd done something wrong. The teacher was tired and frustrated and wanted this resolved so she could move on with her day. "Well, you're going to clean them during recess," Mrs. Henderson said. Her tone was final. "Maybe next time you'll be more careful with classroom property. Go sit down." Maya opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, wanted to explain, wanted to defend herself, but no words came out. She'd learned a long time ago that grown-ups usually didn't listen to kids like her, the quiet ones, the ones who didn't have much. So she just nodded and walked back to her desk with her head down, feeling the weight of everyone's stares on her back. She heard the whispers start immediately. Tommy leaned over to the girl next to him and said something Maya couldn't quite hear, but she heard them both laugh. Melissa was telling another group of girls about what happened, her voice carrying across the room. Maya wanted to disappear. She wanted to sink down through her chair and through the floor and just stop existing. When the recess bell rang, all the other kids jumped up excitedly, racing for the door and the playground beyond. It was a beautiful autumn day, perfect weather for running around and playing games. Maya watched them go. Mrs. Henderson handed her a bottle of cleaning spray and a rag. "Get those marks off," she said. Not unkindly, but not warmly either. It was just instruction, like telling someone to solve a math problem. "I'll check on you in a bit." Then the teacher left to supervise the other students outside, and Maya was alone in the classroom with the ruined cushions and the cleaning supplies. She knelt down in the reading corner and started scrubbing. The crayon marks were stubborn. They didn't want to come off. She sprayed and wiped and sprayed and wiped, and slowly the marks began to fade, but they didn't disappear completely. Her tears came then, quiet and steady, dripping down her face and onto the cushions. She scrubbed harder, angry now, angry at whoever really did this, angry at the kids who blamed her, angry at Mrs. Henderson for not believing her, angry at herself for being the kind of person nobody believed. The kind of person it was easy to blame because she wouldn't fight back. Through the window, she could see the other kids on the playground. They were playing kickball. She could hear their shouts and laughs muffled through the glass, but still there, a reminder of what she was missing. Maya had never been good at kickball, but she liked being outside. She liked the feeling of sun on her face and the way the wind moved. Now she was stuck inside with chemical-smelling spray and cushions that wouldn't come clean. When recess ended and the other kids came thundering back inside, pink-cheeked and happy, Maya was still in the reading corner. Mrs. Henderson came over to inspect her work. "Good enough," she said. "Put the supplies away and get back to your seat." "We're starting science in 5 minutes." That was it. No good job or thank you or I'm sorry you missed recess. Just back to work, back to the routine. Maya put away the cleaning spray and the rag and returned to her corner desk. She didn't look at any of the other kids. She couldn't bear to see their faces. The rest of that day was a blur. Science lesson about plants. Writing time where they had to describe their favorite season. Maya stared at the blank page for a long time before writing a few sentences that didn't mean anything. She used to love writing, but right now she couldn't find any words that mattered. When the dismissal bell rang, Maya packed up her things slowly. Her mom wouldn't be there to pick her up until 5 o'clock, after the after-school program ended. She had 2 more hours in this building where nobody saw her and nobody believed her. That night at home, her mom asked how school was. "Fine," Maya said. It was always fine. That's what she always said. Her mom was too tired to dig deeper, and Maya was too used to handling things alone to know how to ask for help. But something had shifted inside Maya that day. Some small flame that had been burning. The hope that maybe someone would notice her had flickered and started going out. Over the next few days, she stopped coming to school early. Why bother? Mrs. Henderson didn't notice her there anyway. She started arriving right at the bell, slipping into the classroom with all the other kids. She stopped turning in homework. What was the point? She used to get perfect scores and nobody cared. At least if she didn't do it, she didn't have to watch Mrs. Henderson hand back the paper with nothing but a grade, and no recognition of the effort Maya had put into it. She stopped raising her hand in class. Not that she'd raised it much before. She stopped trying to make eye contact with the teacher or smile when something funny happened. She just sat in that back corner and existed in the smallest way possible, taking up as little space as she could. Mrs. Henderson noticed the missing homework. She marked zeros in her gradebook with a little frown, thinking that Maya must be going through something, but she didn't ask. She didn't reach out. She just made a mental note to mention it at parent-teacher conferences next month if it kept up. The other kids noticed Maya even less than before, which seemed impossible but was true. She'd always been quiet, but now she was silent. She'd always kept to herself, but now she seemed to radiate a leave-me-alone energy that made other kids walk past her desk without a second glance. Ms. Rosa, the classroom aide, started to notice, though. She was a grandmother of 4 who worked in the school to stay active and feel useful after retiring from her job at the post office. She helped in several classrooms throughout the day, but she spent her mornings with Mrs. Henderson's 3rd graders. Ms. Rosa had been there the day of the cushion incident. She'd been sitting at the back table helping a student with reading when it all happened. And she'd seen something Mrs. Henderson hadn't seen. She'd seen Kevin, one of the rowdier boys, playing with crayons in the reading corner earlier that morning. She'd watched him scribbling on the cushions when he thought nobody was looking, then quickly walking away when he heard Mrs. Henderson's footsteps. When the other kids blamed Maya, Ms. Rosa had almost spoken up. But Kevin had looked so panicked and she'd hesitated, thinking maybe she should talk to him privately first. Then it all happened so fast. Mrs. Henderson had made her decision. Maya had gone back to her desk and the moment had passed. Ms. Rosa had regretted her silence immediately. She'd meant to tell Mrs. Henderson after school that day, but the teacher had rushed out to a meeting and Ms. Rosa had forgotten. Then days passed and it felt harder and harder to bring up. What would she say? That she'd watched an innocent child be punished and said nothing. But watching Maya shrink into herself over the following days broke Ms. Rosa's heart. She'd seen enough kids in her years to know what giving up looked like. This little girl was giving up, losing hope. Deciding that school wasn't safe, that teachers weren't fair, that trying didn't matter. And Ms. Rosa knew she had to say something, even if it was late, even if it was uncomfortable. Some things mattered more than avoiding awkward conversations. It was Thursday afternoon during planning period when Ms. Rosa finally gathered her courage. Mrs. Henderson was at her desk, red pen in hand, working through a stack of math quizzes. The afternoon sun came through the window and lit up the dust floating in the air. The classroom was quiet except for the tick of the clock on the wall and the occasional scratch of Mrs. Henderson's pen. Ms. Rosa had been thinking about this conversation for days. She'd practiced what she would say while washing dishes at home, while driving to school, while lying awake at night feeling guilty, but now that the moment was here, her heart was pounding and her mouth felt dry. "Mrs. Henderson," she said softly, walking over to the teacher's desk. "Do you have a minute? I need to talk to you about something." The teacher looked up from the quizzes, reading glasses perched on her nose. "Sure, what's up?" Her tone was friendly enough but distracted. She was clearly hoping this would be quick so she could get back to grading. Ms. Rosa pulled up a small student chair and sat down. Being lower than Mrs. Henderson made her feel even more nervous, but there was nowhere else to sit. She folded her hands in her lap and took a breath. "It's about Maya," she began. "About what happened last week with the reading corner cushions." Mrs. Henderson's expression shifted slightly. She set down her red pen and gave Ms. Rosa her full attention. "What about it?" "She didn't do it," Ms. Rosa said. The words came out in a rush, like she needed to say them quickly before she lost her nerve. "I saw Kevin messing with crayons in that corner earlier in the morning. I saw him scribbling on the cushions. When you asked who did it, he got scared and pointed at Maya like the other kids did. But it wasn't her." The color drained from Mrs. Henderson's face. She sat back in her chair, and for a moment she didn't say anything. The clock ticked. Someone laughed in the hallway outside. The world kept moving, but in that classroom everything had stopped. "Are you sure?" Mrs. Henderson finally asked. Her voice sounded strange, kind of hollow. "I'm completely sure," Ms. Rosa said. She felt tears prick at her eyes but blinked them back. "I saw it happen. And I'm so sorry I didn't speak up right away. I hesitated and then the moment passed and I didn't know how to bring it up. But I've watched Maya these past few days and I can't stay quiet anymore. That little girl is hurting." Mrs. Henderson's hands were shaking slightly. She pressed them flat on her desk to steady them. "Why didn't you tell me?" There was no anger in the question, just confusion and hurt. "I should have," Ms. Rosa said, and now the tears did come. She wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. "I was afraid of making it worse somehow. I thought maybe I'd talk to Kevin first. But I handled it wrong, and I'm sorry. I'm telling you now because Maya needs someone to stand up for her, even if it's late." Mrs. Henderson nodded slowly. She took off her reading glasses and rubbed her eyes. When she looked up again, Ms. Rosa could see that the teacher was fighting back tears too. "There's something else," Ms. Rosa said gently. "Have you looked at Maya's records from last year? Her permanent file?" "No," Mrs. Henderson admitted. "Should I have?" "She was student of the month 3 times in 2nd grade," Ms. Rosa said. Her previous teacher wrote that Maya was one of the brightest students she'd ever taught. That she was kind, hardworking, and had so much potential. But something's changed this year. She's not turning in homework anymore. She looks sad all the time. And I think part of it is what happened with the cushions, but I think there's more going on too. Mrs. Henderson felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. Student of the month 3 times? Bright and hardworking? How had she missed this? How had she been teaching this child for 3 months and not seen any of this? "I've also noticed," Ms. Rosa continued, her voice even softer now, "that Maya doesn't eat much at lunch. Yesterday I saw her throw away her whole sandwich. And she wears the same clothes a lot. I think things might be hard at home. I don't want to overstep, but I've been around long enough to recognize when a child is struggling." The full weight of what Ms. Rosa was saying settled over Mrs. Henderson like a heavy blanket. She'd been so busy running her classroom efficiently, so focused on lesson plans and schedules and keeping order, that she'd completely failed to see a student who was right there in front of her, a student who was struggling, a student she'd wrongly accused and punished. "Thank you for telling me," Mrs. Henderson said, and her voice cracked on the words, "I need to fix this." After Ms. Rosa left, Mrs. Henderson sat alone at her desk for a long time. The stack of math quizzes sat ungraded. The sun moved lower in the sky. She thought about Maya, really thought about her, maybe for the first time all year. She pictured the little girl's face when she'd accused her of ruining the cushions. That pale, scared look, the trembling chin, the voice so quiet it was almost not there. And she'd been harsh. She'd been unfair. She'd decided Maya was guilty without really listening, without investigating, without giving her the benefit of the doubt. Mrs. Henderson got up and went to the filing cabinet where student records were kept. She pulled out Maya's file and opened it on her desk. There were the glowing reports from 2nd grade, pictures of award certificates, notes from the previous teacher about what a joy Maya was to have in class. Then there was this year's attendance record. Maya had been late more often recently. There were the zeros for missing homework assignments. Mrs. Henderson flipped back to the emergency contact information and saw Maya's home address in one of the older apartment complexes across town. Mother listed as primary guardian, working 2 jobs. No father listed. Phone number noted as sometimes unavailable during work hours. The picture became clearer. Single mother struggling to make ends meet. Child getting to school however she could. Probably dealing with way more than any 7-year-old should have to deal with. And then coming to school, the one place that should feel safe, and getting accused of something she didn't do by the one adult who should have been looking out for her. Mrs. Henderson put her head in her hands. She'd been teaching for 15 years. She'd taken classes on child development and classroom management. She'd attended workshops on creating inclusive environments. She knew better than this. She was supposed to be better than this. But knowing better and doing better were 2 different things. She'd let herself get caught up in the mechanics of teaching and forgotten about the humans she was teaching. She'd let her bad morning and her frustration turn into unfair judgment of a child who deserved so much more. That evening, Mrs. Henderson couldn't stop thinking about it. She barely touched her dinner. She sat on her couch with a cup of tea getting cold in her hands, replaying that Tuesday morning over and over in her mind. What if she'd asked more questions? What if she'd talked to Maya privately instead of in front of the whole class? What if she'd actually listened when the child said she didn't do it? She thought about her own 3rd-grade teacher, Mrs. Palmer. Mrs. Henderson had grown up poor too, in a house that wasn't always safe, with a father who drank too much and a mother who worked herself to exhaustion. School had been her escape, and Mrs. Palmer had been the first teacher who really saw her. She remembered the day Mrs. Palmer pulled her aside after class and told her she was smart. Really smart. Smart enough to do anything she wanted with her life. Mrs. Henderson had been 8 years old, wearing a stained shirt and shoes with holes, feeling like she was worth nothing, and Mrs. Palmer had seen something in her that nobody else had seen. That one moment of recognition, of being truly seen by someone who cared, had changed the trajectory of her entire life. She'd started trying harder in school. She'd gone to college. She'd become a teacher herself because she wanted to be like Mrs. Palmer, to be that person who sees potential in kids that nobody else notices. But somewhere along the way, she'd lost that. She'd gotten caught up in test scores and lesson plans and classroom management. She'd become efficient instead of compassionate, organized instead of observant. She'd turned teaching into a job instead of a calling, and Maya had paid the price for that. Mrs. Henderson didn't sleep well that night. She kept waking up with her heart racing, thinking about that little girl sitting alone in the classroom during recess, scrubbing cushions with tears running down her face. Punished for something she didn't do, unseen and unheard. The next morning, Mrs. Henderson woke up before her alarm. She got ready for school quickly, then stopped at the bakery on Main Street on her way in. She bought 2 blueberry muffins, the kind with the sugar crystals on top that sparkled. Then she stopped at the gas station and got a small carton of apple juice. She got to school earlier than usual before the sun was fully up. The building was quiet and dark. She let herself into her classroom and turned on just the lamp on her desk, leaving the overhead lights off. Then she walked back to Maya's desk in the corner and set down the muffins and the juice on a napkin. She pulled a student chair over next to Maya's desk and sat down to wait. Her heart was pounding. She'd rehearsed what she wanted to say, but now all the words felt inadequate. How do you apologize for failing a child so completely? How do you make up for not seeing someone who desperately needed to be seen? At 7:15, right on time, the classroom door opened. Maya walked in, and when she saw Mrs. Henderson sitting there in the dim light, she froze. Her eyes went wide. For a second, the teacher thought the little girl might turn around and walk right back out. "Good morning, Maya," Mrs. Henderson said softly. Her voice was gentle, nothing like the sharp tone she'd used that Tuesday. "I'm glad you're here. I've been waiting for you." Maya didn't move. She stood in the doorway, backpack hanging from one shoulder, looking confused and wary. In her experience, teachers waiting for you before school meant you were in trouble. It meant something bad was about to happen. "You're not in trouble," Mrs. Henderson said quickly, reading the fear on the child's face. "Actually, I need to talk to you. Would you come sit down? I brought you some breakfast." Slowly, carefully, like she was approaching a wild animal that might bolt at any moment, Maya walked over to her desk. She looked at the muffins and juice, then at Mrs. Henderson, then back at the muffins. She didn't understand what was happening. "Please sit." Mrs. Henderson said, gesturing to the chair. "Those are for you. I thought you might be hungry." Maya climbed onto her chair, moving slowly, still watching the teacher like she expected a trick. Mrs. Henderson pulled her own chair a little closer, close enough to talk quietly, but not so close that she invaded the child's space. "Maya," she began, and her voice was thick with emotion. "I owe you a very big apology." The little girl's eyes went even wider. Adults didn't usually apologize to kids, at least not in Maya's experience. "Last week, when the reading corner cushions got messed up, I blamed you," Mrs. Henderson continued. "I didn't listen when you said you didn't do it. I punished you without really finding out what happened. And I was wrong, so wrong. You didn't mess up those cushions, and I'm so sorry I didn't believe you." Maya stared at her lap. Her hands were folded tightly together, knuckles white. "It's okay," she whispered. "No," Mrs. Henderson said firmly but gently. "It's not okay. When a teacher makes a mistake, especially one that hurts a student, it's not okay. You deserved better from me. You deserve better from me every single day, and I haven't been giving you that." A tear rolled down Maya's cheek, then another. She didn't make a sound, but her shoulders started to shake. Mrs. Henderson felt her own tears coming and didn't try to stop them. "I should have been paying attention," the teacher said. "I should have seen you. Really seen you. And I'm going to do better. Starting right now, I promise." Maya didn't know what to do. Grown-ups didn't cry in front of kids. Teachers especially didn't cry. But Mrs. Henderson had tears running down her face, and she wasn't trying to hide them or wipe them away. She was just sitting there looking at Maya with eyes full of something the little girl couldn't quite name. Sadness, maybe. Or regret. "You can eat your muffins," Mrs. Henderson said gently, gesturing to the napkin. "They're still warm, and the juice is the good kind, the one without all the weird ingredients." Maya picked up one of the muffins slowly. It was soft and smelled like blueberries and sugar. She took a tiny bite. It was delicious, maybe the best thing she'd eaten in weeks. At home, breakfast was usually generic cereal with milk that was about to go bad, or sometimes just toast. This muffin tasted like somebody cared. Mrs. Henderson watched her eat for a moment, and then she took a breath. "Maya, can I ask you something? And you can be completely honest with me. I promise I won't be upset no matter what you say." The girl nodded, chewing carefully, still not quite trusting this but wanting to. "Do you like school?" the teacher asked. Maya thought about it. A month ago, she might have said yes, or at least not said no. But now, sometimes, she said quietly. It was the most honest answer she could give. "What parts do you like?" "I like reading," Maya said. "And I like science when we do experiments. I like learning about animals and space and how things work." "You're really good at those things," Mrs. Henderson said. "I've seen your work. You're one of the smartest students in this class, Maya. Do you know that?" The little girl shrugged. She didn't feel smart. Smart kids had friends and teachers who noticed them and lives that felt easier than hers did. "Your teacher last year wrote in your file that you were exceptional," Mrs. Henderson continued. "She said you were kind and curious and one of the best students she'd ever taught." She was right, and I'm sorry I didn't see that sooner. More tears slipped down Maya's face. She didn't know why she was crying. The muffin was good and the teacher was being nice, but somehow that made it worse. It made her realize how much she'd been hoping for exactly this, for someone to notice her and care about her, and how much it had hurt when nobody did. "Can I tell you something?" Mrs. Henderson asked. Maya nodded. "When I was your age, I was a lot like you. I was quiet. I didn't have a lot of friends. Things were hard at home. My dad wasn't around much and my mom worked all the time, and I felt kind of invisible most of the time." Maya looked up, surprised. She couldn't imagine Mrs. Henderson being anything like her. Teachers seemed like they'd always been grown-ups, like they'd always had everything figured out. "But I had one teacher who saw me," Mrs. Henderson said. "Her name was Mrs. Palmer, and she taught 3rd grade just like I do now. She was the first person who told me I was smart. She was the first person who made me feel like I mattered, and she changed my whole life, Maya. She's the reason I became a teacher." "Really?" Maya asked. Her voice was still quiet, but there was something in it now. A little bit of hope, maybe. A little bit of curiosity, really. Mrs. Henderson confirmed. "I wanted to be like her. I wanted to help kids the way she helped me. But somewhere along the way, I forgot what that was supposed to look like. I forgot to really pay attention to my students as people. I got so busy with lesson plans and schedules that I stopped seeing the kids right in front of me." She paused, looking directly at Maya. "But you reminded me. What happened last week, it showed me that I'd lost my way. And I'm grateful for that, even though I'm so sorry it happened the way it did." They sat there quietly for a minute. Maya finished her first muffin and started on the second. The classroom was still dim and peaceful. Just the two of them and the lamplight and the early morning stillness. Outside, the sky was getting lighter. Other students would start arriving soon. "Maya," Mrs. Henderson said, "I want to do better. I want to be the kind of teacher you deserve. But I need your help. I need you to tell me what you need from me. What would make school better for you?" Nobody had ever asked Maya that before. She thought about it, picking at the muffin top. "I don't know," she said finally. "That's okay," Mrs. Henderson said. "You can think about it. And anytime you want to talk to me about anything, even if it's not about school, you can. My door is always open for you. Actually, would you like to have lunch together sometime? Just you and me? We could eat in here and talk, or we could eat outside if the weather's nice." Maya's eyes widened. "Really? Really? What if we did it once a week? Every Friday, just the two of us. You can tell me about your week, or we can talk about books, or we can just eat together quietly if that's what you want. How does that sound?" "Good," Maya said, and for the first time in weeks she smiled. It was a small smile, tentative and fragile, but it was there. That day in class, things were different. Mrs. Henderson greeted Maya by name when she came in with the other students. During morning meeting, when students shared about their lives, the teacher asked Maya if she wanted to tell everyone about her favorite book. Maya talked about a story about wild horses, and Mrs. Henderson listened like it was the most interesting thing she'd ever heard. During reading time, Mrs. Henderson sat next to Maya and asked her opinion about the book they were studying. During math, when Maya got a hard problem right, the teacher made a point to say, "Excellent work, Maya. Your problem-solving skills are really impressive." The other kids noticed. Some of them gave Maya curious looks like they were seeing her for the first time. She was still quiet, still kept to herself mostly, but there was something different about her. She sat up a little straighter. She didn't seem quite so small. That Friday, Maya and Mrs. Henderson had lunch together in the classroom. The teacher had brought sandwiches from the deli down the street, the good kind with fresh bread and lots of vegetables. They ate at one of the small tables by the window, watching birds hop around outside. "Tell me about your mom," Mrs. Henderson said. "What's she like?" Maya thought about it. "She's tired a lot," she said honestly. "She works really hard, but she's nice. She always kisses me goodnight even if she gets home late." "It sounds like she loves you very much," Mrs. Henderson said. "Yeah," Maya agreed. "I love her too. I wish I could help her more. I try to be good so she doesn't have to worry about me." Mrs. Henderson's heart clenched. 7 years old and already trying to make herself smaller, trying not to be a burden. "Maya, you know what? You're a kid. You're supposed to be taken care of, not the other way around. Your mom would want you to just be a kid, and I want that for you too." Over the next few weeks, Mrs. Henderson made good on her promise. She ate lunch with Maya every Friday. She greeted her by name every morning. She displayed Maya's perfect spelling test on the bulletin board with a note that said, "Excellent work by Maya." She called on her in class and praised her insights. She sat with her during free reading time and asked her to recommend books. But Mrs. Henderson also did more than that. She looked into the school's breakfast program and made sure Maya was signed up to get free breakfast every morning. She discreetly provided school supplies when she noticed Maya's running low. She talked to the counselor about getting Maya connected with after-school tutoring, not because the girl needed academic help, but because it meant a safe place to be with healthy snacks until her mom could pick her up. And she called Maya's mom. One evening after school, Mrs. Henderson dialed the number in Maya's file, half expecting it to go to voicemail. But Maya's mom answered, sounding exhausted and a little worried. Parents usually only got calls from teachers when something was wrong. "Hi, this is Mrs. Henderson, Maya's teacher," she began. "I'm calling with good news. I wanted you to know what an amazing daughter you have." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Is everything okay?" the mom asked. "Everything's fine," Mrs. Henderson assured her. "More than fine. I just wanted to tell you that Maya is one of the brightest students I've taught in my 15 years of teaching. She's kind, she's smart, she's thoughtful. You should be so proud of her." Maya's mom started crying. "I am," she said through tears. "I am so proud of her. I just worry I'm not doing enough. I work so much and I know she's alone a lot and I can't afford to give her all the things other kids have." "You're doing everything that matters," Mrs. Henderson said firmly. Maya knows you love her. She talks about you with such admiration, and I want you to know that I'm going to make sure she gets what she needs at school. If there's ever anything you need help with, school supplies or resources or just someone to talk to, please call me. I'm here for both of you. When they hung up, both women were crying, but they were good tears. Relieved tears. Hope-filled tears. At school, Maya started turning in homework again. She started raising her hand in class, tentatively at first, then more often. She started sitting in the reading corner again, though she still preferred times when it was quieter and less crowded. She even started talking to some of the other kids, small conversations that didn't lead to friendships right away, but were a start. One day in December, Maya came to school with something in her backpack. At the end of the day, after the other kids had left, she pulled it out and walked up to Mrs. Henderson's desk. It was a drawing. "I made this for you," she said quietly, holding it out. Mrs. Henderson took the paper carefully, like it was made of glass. It was a drawing done in crayon and colored pencil. It showed two people holding hands, one tall and one small. They were standing under a rainbow and the sun was shining down on them. At the bottom, in careful letters that Maya had obviously worked hard on, it said, "Thank you for seeing me." Mrs. Henderson read those words once, twice, 3 times. Then she looked at Maya, at this little girl who had taught her so much, and she couldn't stop the tears. "Can I hug you?" she asked. Maya nodded and stepped forward. Mrs. Henderson hugged her gently and the little girl hugged back, and for a moment the world was just the two of them and this understanding that sometimes seeing someone, really seeing them, is the most powerful thing you can do. "Thank you for this beautiful drawing," Mrs. Henderson said when they stepped back. "I'm going to keep it forever. And Maya, thank you for not giving up. Thank you for teaching me to be a better teacher." "You're welcome," Maya said, and she smiled, a real smile that lit up her whole face. Mrs. Henderson kept that drawing in the top drawer of her desk for the rest of her teaching career. On hard days when she felt overwhelmed or frustrated, she would open that drawer and look at those two figures holding hands under the rainbow. She would read those words, "Thank you for seeing me," and remember why she became a teacher in the first place. The rest of that school year was different for both Maya and Mrs. Henderson. The little girl slowly came out of her shell. She found her place. She found her voice. And most importantly, she found someone who saw her as valuable and worthy of attention. Mrs. Henderson changed too. She started greeting each child by name, making eye contact, asking them how they were doing. She stopped thinking of teaching as just delivering curriculum and started thinking of it as building relationships. Every single child in that classroom had a story, and she realized her job was to see these children as whole human beings. Maya finished 3rd grade with straight A's. More importantly, she finished it smiling. Her family's situation didn't magically improve, but Maya had learned something crucial that year. She'd learned that she was worth seeing, that her voice mattered, that she was smart and capable and deserving of good things. Years passed. Maya continued through school, facing more challenges along the way. But she never forgot what Mrs. Henderson had taught her. She never forgot that she was worth believing in, worth fighting for. When Maya was in high school, she wrote an essay about Mrs. Henderson for her English class. She wrote about being invisible and scared, and about a teacher who took the time to see her. The essay was so powerful that she was asked to read it at a school board meeting. "When I was 7 years old, I felt invisible," Maya read to the audience. "But then my teacher made a mistake. She blamed me for something I didn't do. What happened next changed my life." She apologized. She saw me for the first time and she didn't look away. Mrs. Henderson taught me that every person deserves to be seen. She saved me from disappearing. Mrs. Henderson sat in the audience with tears streaming down her face. After the reading, Maya walked up to her and hugged her tight. "I wouldn't be here without you," Maya whispered. "You taught me that I matter." Maya graduated high school with honors and went to college to study elementary education. She wanted to be a teacher, just like Mrs. Henderson. During her training, she asked to be placed back at Riverside Elementary, to learn from her mentor one more time. It was surreal being back in that classroom. Maya stood at the front of the room beside Mrs. Henderson, helping teach a new group of 3rd graders. And Mrs. Henderson watched with pride as Maya noticed the quiet ones, praised their efforts, and made sure every child felt seen. After Maya graduated, she got her first teaching job at a school in a neighborhood similar to the one she grew up in. She decorated her classroom with bright colors and comfortable reading areas. And on the first day of school, she stood outside her door and greeted each child personally. She made sure from minute one that every single child knew they were seen. There was a quiet girl named Anna who reminded Maya of herself. She sat in the back corner, keeping her eyes down. Maya made a mental note. This one needs to know she matters. Years continued to pass. Maya taught third grade, then became a mentor teacher, then a principal. In every role, she remembered what Mrs. Henderson had taught her. She made sure every teacher understood that seeing children as whole human beings was the most important part of the job. One day, nearly 25 years after that morning with the blueberry muffins, Maya received sad news. Mrs. Henderson had passed away peacefully. At the memorial service, Maya stood up to speak about the teacher who had changed her life. Good teachers give us knowledge, Maya said, but the very best teachers give us something more precious. They give us the understanding that we matter. They see us when we feel invisible. Mrs. Henderson was that kind of teacher, and because of her, I've tried my whole career to be that kind of teacher too. After the service, Maya was given a box that Mrs. Henderson had left for her. Inside was the original drawing from third grade and a note. Thank you for teaching me to see. You changed my life just as much as I changed yours. Keep teaching children to know they matter. Maya took that drawing to her office and hung it on the wall. Beneath it, she added a plaque with words she'd written herself. Every child deserves to be seen. This is not extra. This is everything. The story of Maya and Mrs. Henderson reminds us that we all have the power to change lives. We don't need special training or resources. We just need to pay attention, to see the people around us, to show up with kindness, to let people know they matter. Because sometimes the smallest acts create the biggest changes. A kind word, a personal greeting, a few minutes of attention, an apology when we make a mistake, a muffin shared on a quiet morning. These small moments are where transformation happens. When Maya finally retired after decades of teaching, she had impacted more than 40,000 students. Every single one of them had learned that they were worth seeing, that their voices mattered, that they were valuable and deserving of care. And it all started because one teacher chose to see one child. One teacher decided to pay attention. One teacher apologized for a mistake and committed to doing better. That's the power we all have. The power to see, the power to acknowledge, the power to care, the power to change a life by simply noticing someone and letting them know they matter. It's not complicated, but it is everything.